Back in February, I witnessed unconscionable behavior by this Fullerton City Council, Fullerton City Attorney, and the Fullerton Police Chief. The behavior was to provide false and very misleading information about the Fullerton Child Sex Offender Residency Restriction Law, known as Ordinance 3149, to justify its repeal. This false narrative, led by City Attorney James Touchstone, demonstrated a lack of character by him and all who played along with this charade. I am here to proclaim very loudly that character does count, and not one individual on the dais that evening demonstrated any character. Not one. Whether you happen to agree with their votes or not, it is never good for the public to have elected and appointed officials who mislead, misinform, and sometimes out and out lie to us. Diane Hickey, Joe Imbriano, and myself clearly documented on the record here in this chamber the erroneous information City Attorney James Touchstone spelled out as part of an official presentation to Council recommending the repeal of Ordinance 3149. He stated erroneously that the ordinance impacts all sex offenders when the ordinance clearly defines a sex offender as only child sex offenders for purposes of the law. After we proved that Mr. Touchstone provided false information to the council in support of his recommendation to repeal Ordinance 3149, every single council member ignored that fact and voted to repeal the ordinance anyway. They, in fact, by not acknowledging James Touchstone's egregious error, chose to be a huge part of the deception. Touchstone's failure to acknowledge his error after we corrected him strongly suggests that it was not an error at all, but an intentional ploy / conspiracy to mislead the public on this very important issue. What has City Attorney Dick Jones done in regard to this misinformation given by his partner in his law firm? As far as I know, absolutely nothing. This whole scenario is shameless behavior by our City of Fullerton government, and it can't be tolerated going forward. I can't for certain claim that each and every one of those individuals sitting here tonight will be held to account by the Fullerton public. But what I can say is that God will in fact judge them for their ethical and moral failings as our elected and appointed Fullerton officials. Thank you.
Good evening, Joe Imbriano. Mr. Levinson's points need to be well taken. He knows what he's talking about. The city attorney that was here that night was parsing words and playing games with the truth. And all five of you as elected representatives should look into what Mr. Levinson has raised. Mr. Silva, your wife is in the assembly. State law protecting sex offenders is what's really going on, not protecting children. The state law that's in place right now has no teeth. The local ordinance that Mr. Levinson worked hard to get passed had teeth. The state laws don't do what people think they do. Barry's law did. Barry's law was very specific in terms of who it applied to, and thereby making it very strong in terms of its ability to withstand challenges in court. It had never been challenged in court, and you caved like a bad hand at a blackjack table. Listen, folks, you have children. Mr. Seaborn, you have children. Ms. Fitzgerald, you have children. Bruce, you don't, but I'm sure you got nieces and nephews. Doug, you've got a family. Jesus, I don't know if you've got children, but look, we have to protect our children. Right now, with Barry's law being gone, off the books, by your unanimous vote, the deterrent to keep these people from moving into this town is gone. And what we have now are very carefully planning people who know how to circumvent and violate the law. Child molesters are psychotic people, and they're very dangerous, and they're psychopathic, and they're very calculating. And when you remove a local restriction on residency and the word gets out, they'll come because they have a problem. They have an addiction. And that addiction is to molest children, to kidnap children, to do horrible things to children. Who in their right mind in an elected capacity would turn their back on what this gentleman said, I may request that you all submit to a mental exam after what he has presented and what Diane and I have presented here. You need to look into what we've alleged because it's factual. If it's above your head and it's beyond your pay grade, then you don't deserve to be sitting in the chairs that you're in. That's a fact. Now, I'm going to switch gears here for a second. This woman lives, Miss Rosen lives in a very nice neighborhood. They pay a ton of money in property taxes. And let me tell you something, folks. There's a bunch of money missing from this city, and it needs a full audit from the state attorney general or somebody, because I have strong suspicion that possibly tens of millions of dollars are missing. There's no other excuse for the condition of our infrastructure. No other city in Southern California has this problem with this tax base. It makes absolutely no sense. It defies logic. I smell a rat here, and somebody on this council better do something about it. Thank you.